Back to books. Back to books. Not Thomas Pynchon for once. It's the masterpiece of masturbation, Portnoy's Complaint by Philip Roth in this lovely little vintage edition.
Nice.
Look, and it's got his psychiatrist seat there.
Well, yes.
So, do you know anything about Portnoy's Complaint?
Nope.
Alright, so Portnoy's Complaint is seen as one of the best novels of the 60s. It was a massive, massive hit when it came out that made Philip Roth a huge national celebrity and a multi-millionaire. So basically, the plot of the thing is it's all done as if it's a psychiatrist sort of session.
Okay.
In fact, the description doesn't actually tell you the story. It says, Portnoy's Complaint, named after Portnoy, 1933 to... doesn't have a thing. A disorder in which strongly felt ethical and altruistic impulses are perpetually warring with extreme sexual longings, often of a perverse nature. Spielvogel says acts of exhibitionism, voyeurism, fetishism, autoeroticism and oral coitus are plentiful as a content of the patient's morality. However, neither fantasy nor act issues in genuine sexual gratification, but rather in overriding feelings of shame and the dread of retribution, particularly in the form of castration. It is believed by Spielvogel that many of the symptoms can be traced to the bonds obtaining in the mother-child relationship. So the idea of the book is it's this character, Portnoy, Alexander Portnoy, who is a sort of Jewish kid, parent of Jewish immigrants, who's risen high. He works for the city mayor. I can't remember what he does now. He's like he helps people who are like downtrodden, essentially. So he's like an honourable person within that kind of sphere, but he's riddled with anxiety. He's basically like a bit of a Woody Allen type character. It's a very Jewish novel.
Okay.
It's seen as being like one of the definitive texts for sort of the not modern, but sort of like mid-60s, early 70s kind of Jewish experience, because it goes back to his sort of childhood when he had. In fact, the first sort of chapter is called "The Most Unforgettable Character I've Ever Met," which is how he describes his mother. So it's about his mother is portrayed as being sort of like this stereotypical Jewish mother, like you gotta be back by 8.
Oh yeah.
Constantly like in his life and stuff. Yeah. Have you raked the leaves yet? You know, those kind of like I suppose it's edgy territory to be going on, but
it kind of is, yeah.
But you know, like there's all those well, basically there's a lot of Jewish comedians on there at that time who would just take the piss out of like their upbringing.
Yeah.
So that's sort of that's the territory that he's in within this book. So he's at this Spielvogel's psychiatrist's office, giving this massively long, like the entire book is written as if it's his recollection, and as if it's almost like a stand-up routine in and of itself.
Okay.
He sort of reels off his problems and his insecurities and the reason why he's such a mess, blaming like his parents and the people he's met since and things like that. And it basically acts as a mirror image to the mid-60s sort of sexual mores of the time. Like obviously you think of the 60s, you think of flower power and hippies and everyone's getting off with everybody else and taking drugs. Yeah. And this is all about how he reacts to that, because he is like a sexually liberated character, but he's also hopelessly insecure and anxious and nervous all the time. I suppose it's actually quite a difficult book to talk about because of the amount of random like sex involved in it. Because a massive part of it at the beginning is the fact that Alexander Portnoy masturbates constantly.
Oh right.
He masturbates in the something like 5 times a day when he's like 10 or something.
Oh, Jesus.
It's a massively extreme book. I can see why it caused a lot of controversy in the 60s. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk about just to see whether it still holds up, or if it's just like an act of out to shock.
And
it holds up incredibly well. It's a masterpiece. It's not one of my favourite Philip Roth books. It's probably my 5th favourite, because it is quite juvenile compared to his later work. It is a book that does feature copious amounts of masturbation and long flowery descriptions of sex. But what separates it from a book like 50 Shades of Grey, which is getting off on nothing else but titillation, is the fact that he's using the sex in the book to comment on the characters and on the times itself.
Okay.
Like, instead of portraying it as like this sort of haven of, freedom and like an idealised paradise, this kind of sexual evolution of the 60s, he's basically talking about how it's another excuse for Portnoy to continue to look for an identity outside of just being Jewish.
Okay.
Because a big theme of Philip Roth's work and Portnoy's Complaint in particular is the idea of like what is the Jewish identity after sort of that first wave of immigrants that came in after like World War Two.
Yeah.
So it's all about him trying to define himself in something other than just being Jewish or other than as his parents' child. So his mother is sort of like a housewife and his dad is an insurance salesman who's sort of working himself to death, never has any money, kind of exploited. So when he grows up, he's like he does this job which is he works like for essentially for the government, and if he works for the mayor, he's got like a good job, constantly having sex and sort of being free in that way. So he's in many ways rebelling against his parents by doing this kind of thing, but it never seems to give him any kind of joy. He seems just as confused and scared as he always is, and anxious, despite the fact that he seems to have more freedom than his parents' generation. So in a way, it's also about the listless kind of existential thing about being, like in the 50s and 60s, people had everything, but also what kind of genuine gratification did it give them? The best quote actually is just a small line where it goes, "Let's put the id back in yid." That's a great one-liner, isn't it? Yeah. Little sections where he masturbates into the liver, and all the descriptions of him masturbating and having sex are like only a real small part of the book. The majority of it is his incredibly complex relationship with his mother and father, and his sort of relationship with women later on. Because it's implied his relationships have sort of been sort of thwarted and confused by this deeply weird relationship he has with his mother. Because his mother's sort of, again, that sort of cliched sort of like domineering mother figure, oh, I gotta get a job and all that kind of stuff, and constantly pushing him to do that. It's also kind of atypical of Roth's work. So to describe like what happened with Roth, after he made this, his novels for a long period of time, up until what I think is a masterpiece, which is Sabbath's Theatre. That's an insane book. It's about a mid-60s guy who's a puppeteer.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like a rabid sex addict, and his wife dies, and he goes on like a quest for self-worth. But it's just full of like extreme sex acts and perversion. Because he's fired from, he used to be work at a college, and he's fired for having an affair with like one of the students.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's an extreme book. You should read it actually.
I think I've got it somewhere.
Yeah, I lent it to you. It's just there.
Yeah.
That also features. That is almost a spiritual sequel to Portnoy in a way.
Oh yeah.
Because this features a bit where a guy masturbates into a piece of liver. Sabbath's Theatre features a bit where Sabbath goes to his wife's grave and masturbates into the where he masturbates onto the gravestone.
He likes his masturbation, this guy.
Yeah, he constantly writes about that. Like there's one of his books, The Ghostwriter, where a character he's a character who's a writer, clearly an analogue for Philip Roth, Nathan Zuckerman. He goes to he meets like his literary hero and stays over for the weekend, and first thing he does when he's alone is masturbate. Like in his like study.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, what he writes about, his novels feature a lot of description of sex, and he seems they're quite pervy in a way, as in they seem to that the characters just constantly just think and talk about sex, but he uses it in a way where it is descriptive of what the characters think. Like the idea of the reason why Portnoy is so fixated on, because the book is looking back at his childhood. The reason it's so fixated on his masturbation is because that'd be what he would remember from that, is because he had this domineering parents. So it's sort of that's seen as the skeleton key for understanding his character, the fact that he looked at everything through this sort of bizarre sexual lens. Plus and all, it managed to sell like millions of copies off of the back of it being seen as this sort of massively extreme dirty book. Yeah, because can you imagine 1969, somebody who was writing a book like this sort of extreme, written in this like really cool hip way, because you've got to think that back then you didn't have as much people telling it as it is and kind of thing. So
you're right.
I imagine that it was seen as like a massively important novel. I mean, it still is now. It's seen as like a huge classic and probably the best Philip Roth book. But back then it must have just been completely unheard of to do. Well, they still had special bookstores that sold nothing but dirty books and things.
In brown paper packages.
So seeing someone write that in a sort of mainstream way is quite... I mean, you had other novels like Lolita.
I was going to say Lolita, yeah.
That came out before and sort of paved the way.
Well, that was... that book was unpublishable in America, and it actually only got popular because it was published as a dirty book in France.
Yeah.
And maybe it caught on, and then obviously maybe people are this is an actual book with story and characters.
That's an amazing novel.
Yeah,
Have you read
it's
it?
great. Yeah.
Yeah, but that sort of read the way for books like this, where that kind of sort of sexual behaviour is just sort of seen standard. Like, it doesn't treat his behaviour as like he's a pervert or anything. It just treats it as like a normal thing, just a part of his character and a way to discuss his character through action. So it's a really important book in those kind of ways. But as I said, there's so much more going on about it in terms of Jewish identity, American identity, what it means to be Jewish in sort of Christian kind of 60s society, trying to make his way. To think that it's been dismissed because it has a scene where a man masturbates into a piece of liver is quite... And it's a really, really funny book as well. Like, because you get into the mind so much of Alexander Portnoy, and it is sort of funny in the kind of why... not why, Rye, W-R-Y.
Yeah.
That kind of way. And just the descriptions of things are so extreme, it's quite funny.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is like a good description of it. Because they're all the women that he goes after, the monkey, are all because he's going after sort of standard American kind of woman.
Okay.
Basically trying to run away from his Jewish identity as much as possible. Like, there seem to be sort of almost stereotypical, just like women from that kind of period. One of the things about Philip Roth is he's often accused of misogyny, which is probably quite accurate.
Okay.
All the women he's seen as being the greatest novelist ever for writing about men and the worst novelist ever for writing about women.
Right. Okay.
Women in his novels are always they're either out there to marry the main character, usually, and make him miserable so he can have affairs with the other type of character, which are like slutty young women who are like sex objects to the male character.
Okay.
His books are really challenging actually, because he does write. He writes men so well, it's confusing when he can't write women at all. The only one that isn't like that is the American Pastoral, where it's all about the relationship with the father and his daughter, and the daughter is actually really well drawn and seems like a real character. But yeah, so this is like a section about it that spells out the theme pretty well. What I'm saying, Doctor, is that I don't seem to stick my dick up these girls as much as I stick it up their backgrounds, as though through fucking I will discover America, conquer America. Maybe that's more like it. Columbus, Captain Smith, Governor Winthrop, General Washington, now Portnoy. As though my manifest destiny is to seduce a girl from each of the 48 states. As for Alaskan and Hawaiian women, I really have no feelings either way, no scores to settle, no coupons to cash in, no dreams to put to rest. Who are they to me? A bunch of Eskimos and Orientals? No, I am a child of the 40s, of network radio and World War II, of 8 teams to a league and 48 states to a country. But he's talking about how, by going with these women, he's trying to become American in a way.
Yeah, I got that,
Yeah. And about how, the rest of that bit wasn't really necessary to read out.
No.
But he was talking about going through
But that's it, but the whole idea about he's going to have this manifest destiny to conquer America through having sex.
Yeah. And I imagine that, in the 60s, a lot of people, it talks about sexual freedom and revolution. A lot of people probably felt that kind of thing, that they were doing something important by, it's that whole thing, checking in and what is it now? Plug in and check out or something. Trying to, instead of just having like a job like your parents would do, all this kind of freedom that goes attached with just being able to do whatever you want, as if you're discovering a new form of America. And the book confounds that as well because he's Jewish. It's like he's trying to ingratiate himself into American society through his sort of sexual desires. So as well as the book being like really dense thematically as well, it's really well written. It has a really muscular prose to it. It's not very poetic. It's just a sort of dry kind of descriptions of things. He uses quite simple words that have like a big effect. He's more inspired by, I suppose, Hemingway and writers like that. Ones that instead of using flowery descriptions,
Tells it like it is.
Tells it like it is. Like he once said that he's concerned about story and character, not style. Okay. He just wants to use the easiest words possible to get across what he's trying to say.
Well, I'd say, sometimes it's just like with filmmaking, like we talk about Inarritu versus the filmmaker of Spotlight,
Yeah.
Sometimes with an author, it's knowing when not to use words.
Yeah.
And not to use flowery dialogue. That's a, I think, sign of a better author.
Yeah.
I mean, they know the appropriate language to use.
Yeah. He reminds me of the anti-Pynchon.
Oh, yeah.
in a way, to bring it back to the other author I talked about. Like, Pynchon's books are highly poetical and go off on all these weird tangents. With Philip Roth, it is literally like, there's one theme, it's Jewish identity, he's going to explore it in as many ways as possible, it always comes back to that. It's always through the eyes of usually one character who's obviously an analogue for Philip Roth. Like, he's wrote so many books where the character is Nathan Zuckerman, who is a successful author of a...
No.
The character of Nathan Zuckerman is an author of a sexually explicit book called Karnofsky, who... and it's just about the trials of being a successful millionaire author.
Okay.
They're surprisingly good for being like that. They are... It's like, you know, when we're joking about, like, when a filmmaker makes a film about being a successful filmmaker.
Oh, yeah, how challenging it is.
That's a bit like that. Like, his books, like, After Portnoy's Complaint, are about how difficult it is to live with being famous after writing a multi-million... like,
my heart weeps.
Your heart weeps at Philip Roth.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why he sort of, like, he comes back in the 90s when he writes, like, Sabbath Theatre, which is about, like, a perverted puppeteer, and has clearly nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so... Portnoy's Complaint stands up incredibly well. It's just as good as it was when it was written in 1969. It's not shocking particularly anymore. Just, you know, you live in the world where, you know, I can now type in "man masturbates into liver" on YouTube.
You'll find plenty.
And yeah, I'll find, like, instead of a man it'll be a horse, instead of a liver it'll be 7 women. And you can find all sorts of stuff like that now.
You can be as perverse as you want these days, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not particularly shocking anymore just to have a character masturbate and have that as like, you know, it's horrible. What will the children think?
Think of the children.
Yeah, but it's an incredible book, really worth reading, easy 10 out of 10. And if while I'm going through the Roth books, you know, I might do more like in the Pynchon as well. But yeah, great novel. If you've not checked it out, get it as soon as possible. Not only is it important, it's enjoyable, funny, just the best kind of classic novel. It's not Moby Dick where, you know, it's unreadable.
Yeah.
It's just funny as well. Just a hilarious book. And, you know, anyone will be able to relate to this sexually stunted man-child. But yeah, check out Portnoy's Complaint. There you go.